Hello and welcome back to my channel. I am Mercedes and this is the Frugal Life with Mercedes. Today we are going to talk about the unhoused. So my title does say homelessness, homeless, but it is technically unhoused or people experiencing homelessness. And the reason being is because homeless has a negative connotation, and it also can be degrading to the individuals experiencing unhousing. Now, I do want to tell you guys that as of 2024, that was the most recorded homelessness since we started keeping track. And the Department of Housing started keeping track in just 2020 in 2007. Why they started keeping track in 2007, I have no idea, because homelessness has been a problem in the U.S. for a very long time. There's a lot of state programs that started due to different areas of the country being exposed for being in grave poverty situations. The free meals acts in schools and free and subsidized breakfasts and lunches and things like that, and different after school programs providing food for children. All these things have come into play because different things have come to the light of, hey, these individuals need more help depending upon where they live and what their demographic is and all that kind of thing. And all that stuff is super complicated and complex. But homelessness, unhoused, people experiencing homelessness, it is on the rise. I can only speak for where I live. We have a couple of major street corners where people will panhandle, and during different times I have seen more people out there. So like in 08, 09, you would see people there. There's like 5 corners in the one major town, and I happen to live there now, but before I lived in another town. But when you would come here, you would see it. So there's about 5 corners that are pretty that's where people that are panhandling will go. So 08, 09, and then there was a bunch of people on those spots in like 2012, and then of course during the pandemic. But we have been noticing more people out there again. And there will be laps of times where there's nobody out there, and then there's laps of times where there's somebody out there all day, every day. And being unhoused is super complicated and complex, as I said. Now, why is homelessness on the rise? First and foremost, it is due to lack of affordable housing. That is one of the reasons why we call it unhoused. One, it has, homelessness has a negative connotation, and it also can be degrading to the people that it is geared towards. But the largest issue with homelessness is the fact that there's a lack of affordable housing. And not just, if somebody is low income, they have to go on a wait list for housing that may or may not ever come. And you have to adhere to strict rules, and possibly if you have a criminal record or something like that, you might, not fit the qualifications to get onto that housing if it ever comes around. So lack of affordable housing is first and foremost. Also, rising costs in general. So if somebody doesn't have a steady job, they can't pay their rent, and then they don't have a place to live. Lack of federal programs to ensure that people have safe, affordable housing, because asking someone who's low income to pay an astronomical amount of rent is unreasonable. But that's the way that it is. A property manager or somebody that's renting their property, it's theirs. They can ask whatever they want, and of course, it's a business, so they're going to want to get as much as they can. So That is a problem. Also, health issues. So, a lot of people still do not have health insurance or don't have good health insurance, or they might have health insurance, but if a real medical issue arises, the amount that they have to pay out of pocket is so staggering that it would completely bankrupt somebody. And I do have to mention that drug and alcohol abuse and mental health, those are also factors in homelessness. But when you see somebody panhandling or you see a group of people that you assume are unhoused, what do most people say? Oh, they must have a drug problem. Oh, they must be this, they must be that. And although those things are factors, I want you guys to keep in mind that you have to put yourself in somebody else's situation. If you grew up in a really rough situation and then you're kind of thrown out into the world and you grew up with your parents abusing substances and that's all you know, and depending upon the situation, you have your own issues, because I want to point out that drug and alcohol issues are a disease. And if somebody in your family, especially one of your parents, had an issue with that and you grew up seeing that, you're more likely to have those issues. I can only speak from my own personal experience. Alcoholism is a huge issue in my family on both sides, my biological father's side and my mother's side. And so I don't really drink. Like, I have a cocktail once in a while, and I'm sure you guys are like, what does this have to do with homelessness? And I'm letting you know that it's like, I saw what substance abuse problems can do, and I took that and tried to avoid that. But I also had a loving mother and a loving stepfather that raised me, and they didn't have issues. So do you know what I mean? I had that positive influence. But if not everybody's in that situation. And then also think, if you're in the pit of despair, your life is going to crap, people are going to do things that maybe don't make sense to the rest of us. But so drug and alcohol issues are an issue with homelessness, along with mental health, because if you don't have access to the medications that you need for your mental illness, or the access to therapy resources or drug rehabilitation and different things like that, what do you think you're going to do with that? So if you have somebody that is clearly mentally ill, like suffering from some sort of mental illness, and they have a substance abuse problem and all these other compounding issues, how do you expect them to hold down a job, clean their life up, keep safe housing? And I understand that we all are responsible for our own decisions, but I guess the more point of this video is that when you see somebody that looks a certain way, try to come at it with kindness. Now, me personally, I do not give money to panhandlers or anything like that. That is just a line in the sand that I have. But in the past, I have volunteered at soup kitchens and food pantries. And I also, throughout the year, donate to local food banks and women's shelters. And I've also donated, it's been a while, but to it was like women that were fresh out of the correctional facility, and I provided goods for them. So these things are all good. And then also, homelessness can also be because of lack of education. So if somebody wasn't able to graduate high school or wasn't able to reach a certain level, the chances of them getting a job is going to be much harder. Or if they don't have access to job programs or higher education, that can be an issue. So if you have a part-time, low-income job, how would you expect somebody to then pay rent? And I also want to point out that homelessness is not just people living in the woods behind the mall or on a park bench. It can also be crowded situations. So if 10 people are sharing a 2-bedroom apartment, yes, they have reliable housing, but it's overcrowded and not necessarily safe. And if they're doing it for monetary needs, like, hey, we all have to pitch in order for this to work, then that's technically homelessness too. And so it's somebody that doesn't have a routine place to sleep at night that is safe for them. So even if they have a home, but maybe their partner is not a safe person, or their situation is not very safe, then they're kind of couch surfing with their mom and then their friend and this, like, that's technically homelessness too, even if they have a home. So it's very, very complicated. And I also want to let you guys know that in 2024, 150,000 children were included in these numbers of homelessness. So it's not just grown-ups, it's children that get dragged into these situations as well. And as I've said in many videos, children are victims of their circumstances. None of us pick who our parents are or the life decisions that they make. And when you are a child, you just gotta go with them wherever they're going and wherever their life choices go. So just a reminder, guys, that this is on the rise, and it's not necessarily due to the things that you think that it is. And I am not encouraging anybody to try to save these people or give them money, but you could volunteer at a local shelter or something along those lines, or put your, if you have the means, put your money into some sort of thing, a program that would help. But it is on the rise, and so since we talk about things that are going on in the world, I figured I would kind of, add this. And it's so much more complicated than this, than what I can put in a video. But just remember, guys, kindness and compassion, and try to remember that not everybody is not trying. Not everybody is a drug addict. Do you know what I mean? Some people have actual real, you know what I mean? Even if somebody does have those problems, those are actual real problems. But it's so complex and complicated, and first and foremost is the lack of affordable housing, which really needs to be remedied, because even people that are not homeless are struggling to pay rent and pay mortgages because they're so high. So just a little kindness and compassion, guys, and I hope that you got something out of this video, and please consider subscribing to my channel, and until next time, bye.